Hello and welcome to Sounding Board, a television production of Seroptimus International of Novato. My name is Madeline Peters and my guest today is Etienne Douglas, who is the WebStar coordinator for the Marin City Library. But I'll have him provide a little more background in a moment. First, a word about our organization, Seroptimus International. Our mission is improving the lives of women and girls through programs leading to social and economic empowerment. So Etienne, thank you very much for taking time to be here and to share your message with our viewing audience. But first, before we start our conversation, could you please provide us with a little background on who you are and how you arrived, what's your arrival story here as a member of the Marin County Free Library and as the WebStar coordinator at the Marin, is it what it's called, the Marin City Library?
Yes. Well, thank you for having me. I've been the WebStar coordinator for about going on 11 years. I took over from the previous coordinator, and the WebStar program came about from Annette Rose, a previous supervisor, and she modeled it off of the Explainers program at the Exploratorium.
I see. Okay. And what is your background? You know, have you been involved in technology for some time? And
I've been pretty much involved in technology my entire life. I went to school for mechanical engineering, but changed to computer science, and then I didn't quite finish, but I ended up teaching myself IT, and a lot of that was because of my background and being introduced to computers at an early age.
Could you tell that story? I love that story.
Yeah,
before we start.
So, and my stepdad worked at IBM, and he used to bring home all the different gadgets. Like we had an IBM Selectric typewriter, we had a Commodore 64, and this is before you had cartridges. You had to go out to the store, to the computer store, buy a pad that had the basic code written on it, and to be able to play a game or write a program, you had to copy the basic code into the computer. So if you can imagine a 6-year-old kid.
So you were 6 when you were doing this?
Yeah, a 6-year-old kid typing in code into a Commodore 64 to get it to work.
Well, you certainly have seen the whole computer revolution certainly evolve, and now, of course, you're involved in working with the community and as the WebStar coordinator. So your current position now, you're involved with introducing youth to technology. Could you please elaborate on that?
Yeah. So the WebStar program, I hire high school age students, 14 to 17. And I teach them how to use computers. I teach them different software. I teach them advanced software like Photoshop, Flash, video editing. They learn how to use the library computers. And then in turn, they teach patrons classes on basic computer software programs like Office, Word, Excel. And they also help people that come to the library use the computers. And they also do community projects. So we've done documentaries, we've done profiles on all the library branches. And now we have a 3D printer, and they're learning to use a 3D printer. So they get paid for this. It's not volunteer, it's not. So they're learning, and they get learning job skills, and they're also learning a valuable tool for the future.
So these are 14 through about 17 or 18-year-old high school students that you hire and train. So you're teaching them a very valuable, you're teaching them many skills. You're providing them with quite a rich background in terms of just, perhaps interviewing for this, learning the software that you talked about, but then also tying it back to the community, serving patrons too. So it's quite a little documentary in and of itself, if I think of it that way, just the kind of work that you're doing. It's more than just the list of things that you are talking about. You're creating a very knowledgeable, involved young person, a high school student.
Yeah, yes. I mean, it's not just technology. It's learning responsibility as a whole, knowing how to show up, to work on time, knowing, how to defer to work in a group and defer to other people, and have multiple supervisors. Some of the things that, especially in Marin City, our kids are not used to growing up. So it's a valuable program for them to be in, and especially coming from my background, being introduced to technology at an early age, and I love to be able to introduce these kids to technology that they might not necessarily be introduced to if they were just, if they didn't have this job.
So what you've done is, to me, just knowing a little bit about your background, and I love that story you told about being 6 years old, you're creating, in a sense, for these high school students, that environment and that excitement that perhaps you, as the 6-year-old Etienne, felt when you had these gadgets around and could play around with them, and you just had access to it, and it was very innovative for someone so young.
Yeah, so I believe that technology and being introduced to technology at an early age is very important. I'm reading The Innovators by Walter Isaacson.
Yes, and he's the author of, was he the author of the book of
Steve
Jobs' book, his biography? Yeah.
Yeah, and all the innovators in technology today have a common thread. They were introduced to it at an early age. Either they took apart transistor radios, played with microchips. Their fathers were engineers, and to introduce that to kids that don't have that access has been invaluable. I had one kid that he didn't, he wasn't really, at an early age, he wasn't really interested in studying. He would hide. He would come into the library and hide and study. And you could tell he was apprehensive about it with his friends, because he didn't see it as learning or being smart as being cool. So he would come in, he would hide and study, and he was one of the first kids that I hired because I saw he was a very intelligent kid. And after he graduated from the Webstar program, he went to San Diego State, and he graduated with the IT degree. And right out of college, he got a job with Microsoft.
My goodness, that's quite an involved story. I'm sure the other students that you work with have very interesting stories as well. If you could kind of think back about how many, just a ballpark guess, how many high school students have you worked with just in the time that you've been involved in this program?
Probably about 20 to 25 kids.
Over the whole period of time. And so then they have the chance to kind of play around with the equipment and then gain these skills and then be a part of the community. Overall, like, what do when they come in, when these young teenagers come in, do you have anything special that you do to get them started? Are they willing and interested and excited, or do you have the range, like most classes of students? You've got the really enthusiastic ones and the ones that are not so sure about this.
So what I do is, because I believe technology is universal, especially today. It's almost in everything that you do. So what I do is I ask them, what are you interested in? It could be anything. It could be fashion, could be music, sports. And then I say, okay, this is how technology impacts what you're interested in. So that I find usually captures their attention. because even in fashion, you might use Photoshop. You might you do drawings, uh, hand drawings of dresses and sports. You might use an iPad to get your plays and remember the plays, or keep up with your favorite player or something like that. So, and excuse me, I find that teaching them that technology is everything nowadays, and gets them excited about it.
So what you do is you find out what's interesting to the students, and then you just sort of embed or set the context. Look, this is how this is going to work for you, or this is how you can make the connection. So
Right.
it's very much based on the kids' interests.
Yeah, because that's how I learned. And I didn't know I was learning when I
It's
learned.
even better when you don't know you're learning.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
It's not like work.
Right. Exactly. So, and when I was learning about technology, my interest was to play video games.
I see. Uh-huh.
So then I learned how to, tweak the computer to be able to play the games that I wanted to play.
And so what you're doing now is exposing these students to the technology is going to help them kind of get more involved in their areas of interest. I'm sure that you could write a book about every one of the students
Oh, for
that you
sure.
have. So, and why do you think it's important to introduce this particular age group?
Well, they're in the formative times right now, and at a young age, it's a lot easier to digest, and they take to it quicker. Usually, especially at a young, they're not afraid as much as a lot of other people are. So I usually don't have to do too much explaining. I just show them, and then and it's really getting them, the hardest part is getting them to be motivated to do it,
Right.
and that's where their interests come in. So with the kid with music, and he loved the idea of making music. So that's what I did, is introduce him to this program that you make music with. And I didn't have to force him to come in. Hey, you need to get on here and do, and make the music so you can put on your website. He came in wanting to do that.
I see.
I had a girl who, she was an artist, and she ended up going into graphic design right out of college. So it's and that's where the rubber meets the road, really.
Oh, sure. Well, yeah, if you can get them engaged and motivated, it doesn't, they'll probably have enough energy to see, okay, this is going to help me. If I learn this, it's going to help me achieve my goals. Do the students do a lot of kind of tweaking and figuring things out for themselves in the way you have it set up? I can imagine you have to launch them, but then do they end up being self-taught?
Yeah, some of them do. Some of them take it and run with it, and they pretty much do their own thing. Some of them I have to coerce into doing it, but and I really don't have a preference, and I love to have the kids that just go and do it and just love it and find it immediately, but to be able to also create that responsibility and an introduction to it is also satisfying.
Yes.
So
But you have them, so they learn it for themselves. You get them motivated, you tie it to what they're excited about, you get them to the right program so that it matches their interests, and then they have to learn about it. But that's only part of what you do. There's that community outreach involvement too. Can you speak to, how they move from the learning programs and making the connection that way to kind of the outreach to serving patrons of the library and the community?
yeah, so since the program was started, that was one of the ideas, was to work with the community. So doing community outreach, we've done documentaries. We've taught classes, and they really. And one of the things about the classes is that they I don't know how, I'm not sure how you say it, but they get they learn more when they're teaching the classes.
Well, usually there's a phrase, the one who teaches learns twice.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
so they get the chance to teach, but then they're teaching in a setting because you always get feedback. So,
Right. So it's very empowering for them because and they sit down and usually our classes are one on one. And depending on we've had a few people that come in and they'll take a few classes and then they'll say, oh, I think I'm good. And then we have people that take advantage of it and take the classes for an entire year.
oh my goodness, so you've got quite a curriculum. And these
Yeah.
are those high school students that are teaching these classes.
Yeah, yeah, and they form relationships, and they really become close to the community, and that's part of the connection with the library, is that we want to show that closeness with we want to show that we're community oriented, and that we're not just books and
And
card
special
catalogs.
classes and card catalogs.
Yeah.
There's these programs always go by very quickly, and I know, I know that the Marin City Library has this 3D printer, which is very exciting, and I was wondering if you could speak to that. I can certainly see how your community involvement, the work with the students, they're teaching the patrons, they're kind of championing their own designs, and learning is a really important and valuable part of the Marin City Library. Can you talk about this 3D printer and what's this all about? I have very little information on it.
Well, the 3D printer is really cool. A printer is a bad word. It's really like a fabricator, modeler. So what it does is it takes plastic and it melts it down in layers, and then it's going off of a 3D blueprint that you feed into the printer, and it makes that object.
So this is something that you have that's just part of your library.
We've started it in December. It was open to the public in December. We got the printers in October. This was an idea from my coworker Diana Lopez, and she says I want to get a 3D printer, and I didn't even when she brought it up, I had vaguely heard about 3D printers, and I said, okay, let's get a 3D printer. And we went down to Sunnyvale Library has one, Sacramento Library has one. We went down to Sunnyvale, and we looked at their program and their printer, and it was very popular. They had a 6-month waiting list with 2 appointments a day. So we looked at we definitely want to do this, and we got permission to do it, and it's fantastic. It's incredible.
So now it's like, what do you do with it, or what are the products that come out of it? Who's in charge of these products? And I want to make sure that we spend a little bit of time talking about what's happened as a result of having the 3D printer.
So in what I say with the 3D printer, it's limited by your imagination. That's it. You can make little figurines, you can make trinkets, you can make jewelry, you can make tools. One of the things we made was a 3D printed pool filter.
A pool filter, okay.
Yeah, so and it goes it filters all the bad stuff out of the water. And one of our Marin County firefighters brought his down that was broken, and he said, well, can you guys do this on a 3D printer? And I said, yeah, I'll try to do it. So I ended up designing it and I scanned it first with our scanner, but then I ended up saying, oh, it didn't really come out very uniform, so I ended up designing it from scratch, and it was a good learning process, and it really got a lot of attention. 3dprint.com did a blog post on it. Yahoo picked it up on one of their 7 cool things that people are making with 3D printers. So it's gotten a lot of buzz, and the things that you can make are endless. I mean, they're using it for prosthesis, prosthetics for young kids, because it's a lot cheaper to do it on a 3D printer, especially because a kid grows.
Right, and they need, if they have a prosthetic device, they need to adjust to them as they grow. Or you need to build a new one, or they need a new prosthetic device.
Yeah, yeah. So it's much cheaper to do it through a 3D printer than to, the way they do it now.
So what do the kids do with this? Okay, we only, we've got to, you've got to, I've got to find this out before we.
Yeah. So the kids, I've had kids make toys.
Okay.
Little fighter jet we made the other day. There was one kid. There was one kid that made. He designed the towers for the Golden Gate Bridge for their project that they were doing in school.
Oh my.
So it was a diorama, and instead of making it out of wood, they saw that the 3D printer was available, so they came down and made the towers for the Golden Gate Bridge.
That must have been exciting. So the ideas then come from everywhere, but they come from the patrons, but the kids are involved in this as well.
Yeah. So the web stars, and they learn how to do it. They've made keychains. They thought about. They've made one of my kids. He just got a car, so he wanted to make a holder for his phone.
Of course.
For the in the car. So I try to, and I can't come up with everything. I mean, and I've made a lot of cool stuff, but every day somebody comes in with something new.
So then what you have is that sort of expansion of ideas. It's like you've got your own little think tank going on there, but it's the ideas that actually turn into a usable product. We, I can certainly see that you've got youth and technology and engaging them, and you've got the 3D printer, and it's here you have the products that you're talking about. It seems so sort of it's exciting and it's new, but how do you see these innovations? How do you see these innovations playing out?
So I see the 3D printer the same way I look at the Commodore 64 that that I worked on.
Right.
So it's something that's so new, but it's going to be something that is going to be in everybody's, one day it's going to be in everybody's house. And if you don't learn it now, I mean, if you don't get your foot in the door and learn how it works now, you're going to be.
You'll be struggling like the rest of us trying to figure it out. Yeah.
Right.
Figuring it out later on.
So I think that's one of the things that is the library. It's especially in Marin City that it's important to introduce and have this technology available, because a lot of kids won't have access to this kind of stuff. So that's what we want to do. We want to give access to emerging technologies, and it's invaluable. So them being able to come down and use hands-on with a 3D printer, learn design concepts, learn the different design programs. It's like using Microsoft Word, when it first came out. Now, using it 10 years ago is not much different than using it today.
That's true.
So, and if they have that skill today of using the 3D printer, it's going to be, 30 years from now, they'll still have it.
That's right. That's right. Is there one thing, because we're just about out of time, you've talked about a lot of things, is there something that you'd like to highlight, because we've touched on different things in our conversation today, before we close?
Well, it's the introducing technology to just the masses, and to people who usually can't get access to it. And that's library. I mean, that's been library's role,
right?
Even with knowledge.
And so it's just another layer of knowledge. Well, Etienne, we are out of time, although I really want to schedule another time to talk to you. I want to thank you very much for taking the time to be here and to explain that libraries are more than books and card catalogs.
Yes.
This has been a production of Seroptimus International of Novato. I'd like to thank our crew, who are Seroptimus members, Leon Johnson, who serves as our studio engineer, and the Buck Institute for Research on Aging for providing us with a setting. Today's topic has been on the library, specifically looking at Marin City Library and the emerging role it's taking in advancing technology and engagement in the community. Thank you very much.